There we go.
Okay. Hey, Bob, I have a Gropner radio because I need a lot of channels for the Seaview.
Yeah.
So what a job programming this. I mean, it does everything but make bacon. But I mean, I had to call the tech twice. And the second time I got a German tech. But he got me through it and works beautiful now. But I was pulling my hair out.
This is like a new radio or like an older radio?
No, it's brand new. I bought it a couple of years ago. It's the MC28 Hot, and it's 16 channels and can go to 32 channels. But it does everything. It's got fail safes. It's got, you name it, it's got it. And it was sophisticated way beyond me. I mean,
and this is a low frequency radio?
2.4. Yep.
No, that's high.
That would be high.
No. Yeah, okay. That's what I mean. It's way beyond me. But no, I got a 2.4.
Okay, cool. Well, welcome to the dark side.
Yeah.
So, Frank, I have a question about the radio.
Yes.
Does it respect you the next morning if it does all that?
It even buys me dinner.
There you go. Yeah, what'd that run you?
It was $600.
Yeah, I'm actually talking with a Spirit over the Jetty transmitters, and they're $1,600 for the radio. But that's the ones you also use for high-speed jets to keep from turning them into a lawn dart.
Yeah, so this is mostly for like helicopters and really sophisticated jets and airplanes, but it does have provisions for boats because one of the icons is a boat. Right. And whatever icon you put on, it makes everything lean towards that. So
the Radio Links does that, right, Bob? I could set my AT10 to boats.
Yeah, I'm actually super excited. So you guys know I'm working on that big Baleo class, the 32nd Baleo. So I was worried because I was trying to fight to get everything working with 8 channels. But I'm like, well, it's the ATS-9, so maybe it's like a 9-channel radio, and I could delve down deeper into it. The transmitter is actually 12. Is a 12-channel transmitter, and so I grabbed a 12-channel receiver off Amazon for $20. Yeah. And now I've got a 12-channel receiver in that boat with a 12-channel transmitter. So that's insane. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's the RD12, right?
Yep.
Yeah, that's the one I've been using. And now you have to get the Minipix flight controller so you can get course, speed, and depth. Course, speed, roll, course, roll, and pitch.
I've got one. I've got to dish it out and then dig up your instructions on how to set that up. But yeah, I'm pretty excited about that.
Then you're going to be cooking with gas.
Bob, on that Nautilus that's always behind your head, not now, but it used to be. Mm-hmm. That was a deep diver, was it? It wasn't 2.4 set up on that one.
Yeah, that was a 75 megahertz boat.
Okay.
That was a 75. That was a long time ago. That was I built that for a really famous music composer who was also like a complete and utter Nautilus nut. And that had an OTW dive module in it. And then I built my own bow thruster for it.
Oh, it had a bow thruster?
Yeah, I don't know if you remember, there's that maneuver. I dived down and I hovered, and then I did a 360 under the water and then came back up again.
And how were they hidden?
I just, so the Nautilus has a whole bunch of like intake ports all over the lower hull. So I just opened those up and made a little like nozzle for the thruster.
Oh, okay. I'll have to remember that.
Yeah. So
yeah, the Seaview's...
The big Baleo, we just finished building our own bow thruster for that. Or sorry, it's a stern thruster. I've got it mounted in the back. That's going to work really well. It's got probably like 1.5 inch opening in it, And we put that in our test tank, and that thing spits water out like a fire hose. We're pretty stoked to see how it turns that 10-foot boat around.
Yeah, I made provisions in the Seaview because it's so freaking long, and the rear end, the engines in the back are so close coupled that it's the only thing that's going to turn it. And Ray said with his, it would take him half of Lake Ronkonkoma to make a turn.
I know. So, I got such grief from people saying, "Oh, the real boat didn't have bow thrust." I'm like, you know what? If it's going to make it more enjoyable to operate, you know, I'm all for it.
You should have told them that the real boat isn't in the swimming pool either.
Aren't you the one who say that it's your boat?
Exactly. Exactly.
Now I got a question regarding bow versus stern thrust, and Dave, maybe you could chip in on this. Who has had practical experience with that? And A, will she rotate around the center of gravity, meaning it doesn't matter where you put it? Or if it's in the bow, will it pivot at the stern and vice versa? That's what I'm kind of curious about. Because that's going to, for close order maneuvering, that's kind of, you know, when you're coming about a dock and trying to slip in, whether it pivots at the bow, the stern, or about the center of gravity.
Ed, you know what
the closer to center of gravity, the more the vector will be in a lateral motion rather than rotation.
Right.
You need a long moment arm to get rotation. In other words, as far away from the center of gravity, either forward or aft, as you can to pivot. You want to move laterally, you put it on the CG or close to the CG.
Ed, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to aim mine a little bit forward, like almost on a 45. That way I can use that together with the stern engine, and I could probably stay in one place and turn all the way around. And also, when you're moving forward, if it's straight out the side, it's going to lose some of that force in forward motion, where if it's aimed a little forward, it'll kind of like turn it a little better, I feel. So a little bit of a forward angle on it.
I remember when I was on DSRVs and we were riding those, there was basically in the cockpit, there was 2 large joysticks and you could rotate them, each of them, and then also move them laterally. But as you maneuvered the DSRV, either you wanted to rotate, there was always a counter thrust. So there's one push in one way, one push in another to create that moment.
So it wasn't just about the center point. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't just one going. Large ships will do that. They'll have the maneuvering thrusters in front. It kind of throws the whole, like Dave's saying, it may or may not, depending where it is with CG. But on the DSRVs, it was always counter. You always had one going the other direction, no matter which way you were kind of turning it.
Yeah. I'm already at 10 pounds of crap in a 5-pound bag, so it ain't gonna get one in the back.
There's never enough space.
To answer your question though, Ed, if you put the thruster in the bow, for example, it'll pivot about the stern. So if you kick it on, it'll make, imagine like a clock hand. It'll swivel in a big circle with the stern as the center point. I like putting it in the stern because when you're coming into port or to shore or whatever, you simply come in at 45, stop, kick in the thruster, and then it'll come in parallel to shore, and then you can pull it out as opposed to having to back it in like you're parallel parking or something.
Us real skippers with a single screw can do that with the wind and the single screw and the rudder alone.
Walking the screw.
Yeah. So I got super excited. We were super excited. Jason and I, this never, ever happened. So we get these like old used boats in, right? And we refurbish them. Typically it takes us like a week or sometimes 2, depending how much stuff we need to undo and redo. We had an R class from Ken Griffin come in. I spent 20 minutes on Thursday putting a new receiver in. We trimmed it out on Friday, tested it on Friday, and it was done. It performed beautifully at the pond. I was really, really baffled because those old R class boats, I don't know if you guys remember them, they got these huge bulbous nose sticking up out of the water, and then 2 little shark fin rudders that are like a third of the way in from the aft part. And so they've got very little, moment arm to move the boat. But Ken did a great job. He put some oversized ones in there and it turned really well. And It worked really good. So I don't know what we did to deserve that good karma, but we finished a boat in a day. So
was that the one you had at the first Subfest?
It's the exact same OTW like hull, but a different boat. Yeah,
a different boat, but it was the same hull.
Yep. Yeah, that one that wouldn't turn in like 40 feet. Yep. And the other cool thing that we're working on, and hopefully it's going to work, so that big Baleo, I'm 90% of the way there in terms of the design and mock-up of the prototype, but it's going to have functioning diesel exhaust. Stunned silence, nobody cares. All right, we'll move on to the next topic then.
No, I needed to get off mute, dude. That is cool as hell. Are you going to do the not only the smoke, but also the sound too, like a diesel sound?
I have coming a full sound system that'll have all the coupled diesel sounds and the sonar pings and gun sounds and call to battle stations and all that stuff. And then
that's awesome.
The smoke is tied to the throttle, so you have proportional smoke to throttle.
It's very similar to what they do in model trains, because they have the encoders in each of the trains with the sound decoders, so you can ring bells and do all sorts of stuff. That's awesome.
Yeah, the tricky part, obviously, with the smoke is that you can't suck. You know, you don't want to suck water through a smoke generator. So I had to create, you know, the enclosure and valve system to make sure that nothing got sucked in there.
You need to run that on. You need to run that on a Sunday morning in a private condominium's pond, and find out how much the neighbors like that.
How small was that unit, Bob?
They're tiny. I'd say the pump module is in an enclosure that measures maybe 2 by 1 by 1.5, and then the actual smoke generator is a cylindrical, maybe 2 inches by 1 inch in diameter.
Now, do you have those now?
I do. Well, you mean as a product?
Yeah.
I'm in the process of listing them.
Okay, so
I needed to prove it out first, otherwise there's no point.
Okay, so shortly.
Yeah.
Good.
Put one of those in my order. I just ordered. They haven't shipped yet, Bob. That'd be great.
You'll have to work out because it takes a bit of real estate. Well, and the trick is with the Baleo, you know, and of that size, I need 1 smoke generator per exhaust port. And then I didn't even think until I did more research, it actually has 4 exhaust ports, 1 for each of the diesel motors in that boat. So now I've got to split the exhaust off of each one so that I have 4 functional exhaust ports.
And what about the sound? The sound system? Are you going to carry the sound system too?
I could point you guys towards it. I don't know if there would be enough demand for it. I've got the Digisound modules, which was the big diesel sound. I haven't sold, I think, 1, maybe 2.
No, I bought the one, Bob, and it's so big.
Is it?
It is huge.
Yeah, and I think honestly, this module that I'm getting is pretty sizable too. I think the board is going to be
correct.
Like this.
Yeah, there's nowhere to put it.
Yeah. The interesting thing about this, again, this Baleo, I'm glad I took it on. It's, you know, forcing me to think out of the box. It comes with a standard like 2-inch waterproof speaker, which is going to be fine. I can put it underneath the wooden decks, which are open, like slatted. But I also purchased what's called an exciter. It's basically like a transducer that you can mount to any you know, hard surface. And so it actually utilizes the hull of the boat as the speaker. And so I'm like pretty excited to see how that works.
A soundboard.
Yep. So we'll see. The board actually should be there on Monday. We'll have a chance to start playing with it.
If you use that exciter, make sure you're using lock washers on all your mechanical fasteners.
Shape the boat apart. Yep.
Okay, good. Thank you.
You bet. So yeah, that was mine. Oh, I don't know if all of you know or not, or you saw the tickets for Subfest are open for purchase. I know a lot of you guys have grabbed them already. So if you're interested in attending, you can go ahead and grab your tickets now. We'll get the agenda nailed down once we get a little bit closer, but the general one will follow the same layout as previous 2 years, just with, I think.
Are you going to have professional videographers on site?
Yeah, I think that was absolutely worth it last time. Yeah, unless somebody here is a professional videographer and they want to volunteer their time.
We can dragoon Ray Mason into this thing. It might be worth your while to, you know, grease that skid. He is a pro, and he'll do the editing. Yeah.
I will reach out. It'd be good to have him here, regardless of whether or not he's doing any work there. I think this year's Subfest, I think, is going to be a lot bigger based on the number of people that are signing up so far and the number of people signing up who weren't there years previous. So it's looking really good. We're still a long ways out, but I think this is going to be really well attended. I wouldn't be surprised if we had double the amount of people we did last year.
Good. Target rich environment.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I floated it to my wife, Bob, but I prefaced it with the anniversary trip to Quebec. Then I mentioned Subfest, and I think she might be on board, so I might be there.
Well, it's on the same side of the continent.
Bob, considering the expected amount, you think tents are going to be needed for extra space to cover people?
I don't know. I don't think so, because like there was that whole separate, like where Dave was. I think that a lot of that was still empty when we were set up last year.
Okay, I remember the first year we had plenty of room.
Yeah.
The second year, last year, you must have grown. I didn't attend it. But if you think we'll be able to accommodate everybody underneath the structure for shade,
we'll just have to share. We'll have to share. One last thing, and then I'll turn it over to you guys. I am, because of all of this expenditure that I've got with all these boats that I got, the Drydocks is cash strapped. So we're going to have a big spring house cleaning sale. And I'm floating the idea around, and this is going to be exclusive for DiveTribe members of it'd be a combination of in-person and pre-registered auction. So I'm going to put a whole bunch of lots of stuff together, and we'll do a DiveTribe meeting. And if you want it, you can do a private chat for your bid, and I'm going to clear out like a whole ton of stuff. So I'm thinking like within the next 30 days, that'll be cropping up. I'll put a list out so you guys can see what's coming up, but there'll be a ton of like electronics and pumps and batteries and motors and kits and all sorts of stuff.
Just to mention, the person that David mentioned before is now online.
Oh, where?
He's there.
He's down there to Lord.
Oh, there he is.
Say hi, Ray.
There he is.
Get off mute and say hi.
Hi, I turned it on.
Good to have you. We were just saying, is what do we need to do to tease you out for Subfest this year?
You can send a private jet.
There you go, Bob.
I don't know about a private jet. I could put you in a tiny ass airplane with me.
Yeah, Bob, you own an airplane, Bob.
You ain't joking, Ray.
Well, we'll see. I'm gonna keep putting a bug in your ear. It would be awesome to have you out there.
Bring your camera equipment. In.
There's an ulterior motive here, Ray. It's not just because you're pretty face.
Oh, thanks. Oh, I see Brian too.
We got a good turnout today.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. That's the news from the Drydocks until something else piques my memory. So I can turn it over to you guys. What do you got going on?
Hey, Mike.
Sir.
Wake up.
I'm wide awake. I'm at work here. I'm getting stuff
Put
done.
the damn model down and show them what you're up to.
I'm double tasking here. Well, I'm starting to attach foam to the inside of the skipjack. Went over with Dave, and we did some trimming. So you can kind of see here, we started to attach the foam, and then reworked the mast raising mechanism inside the skipjack. You can see that's the magnet that impinges on the magnet inside the watertight compartment with linear servo, and I did a cable kind of structure there. It moves a lot smoother now. So you can see here how those will raise and lower. I don't have the inner antennas inside there at this moment, but it moves much smoother. And I had to reposition the magnetic relay. You can kind of see it if you look up in here, this little device here. So as the magnet moves up there, it'll hit that route the ground, and then the sub-ID beacon and the masthead will go on and off as it comes up. Much better than the trombone fixture I had in there previously. So that's on work, and Dave and I have been working on getting the watertight cylinder finally watertight, squared away, and doing some extra work on that amazing Type 7 that I got from Bob. So yeah, pretty exciting stuff. Dave, anything else you like to add?
Yeah, he brought over that cylinder that he got from Bob that came with a Type 7. It's one of Dan Catcher's 1/48 scale Type 7s. I think he came out with that kit about 25 years ago. Who put that together, Bob?
The cylinder? That's Dwayne Hill. He scratch builds all his cylinders.
Well, when Mike came over, he brought the cylinder with him here, and it left a little bit to be desired. So I went ahead and started building replacement, same length, same diameter, but I was able to get a significant amount of gear in a much shorter space. As a consequence, I have a cylinder that can not only house a ballast tank and a propulsion and control area, but a battery as well, which Dwayne's couldn't.
Right.
So for the equivalent length of cylinder, it's fully self-contained, and I might add a little bit easier to access.
Yeah.
A little trouble opening that thing up.
Yeah, I don't know about opening up, but what I've laid hands on probably half a dozen of Dwayne's boats now. He's got a very like well-established methodology for doing things, and he doesn't stray from it. The issue is, when he first builds it, it works perfectly. But the problem is, as we know, something is always going to break. Something is always going to need to be adjusted. And it was not constructed with, those aspects first and foremost in mind. And so it gets somewhat problematic to make adjustments and upgrades to them. But having said that, man, oh man, that boat worked beautifully at the pond with that old cylinder. So
yeah, well, I had a devil of time trying to figure out how to open it up. And anyways, and Dave and I looked at it, and it was a teaching point for me too, to, because I built the cylinder I originally bought for you, but to build another with Dave, so it's a great time for us to, work on something together, and then also add the upgrade. So we're excited to get in there. I think it's gonna work amazingly well. And I tell you what, the Type 7 looks great, man. The way you weathered it,
is amazing. We were able to get away from a gear splitter and go to two proper motors with their outputs in the cylinder, whereas Dwayne had gone a single motor, which required a gear splitter in the wet, which itself was problematic.
Yeah, I've never had a problem with his gearboxes. They're noisy as heck, though. The the Oberon. If you guys watched that last video, I actually commented on that, and it worked beautifully. It was nice and smooth, but man, oh man, it sounded like a rattle, bang attack, like an old school steampunk, piece of equipment when it was under throttle.
Yeah, it was really rattly. This is true. And I couldn't quite get the shafts. It was a little janky inside there, but that's nice to have just dual, shafts coming straight out of the back of the WTC. I'm trying to find that thing, and I could show it to the group if I could find it, but I'm not sure where I put it in.
And that's the news from Lake Wobegon.
Yeah, that was one of Dan actually chimed in. He emailed me after. He said that was one of his first kits. He remembered selling that to Dwayne like 20 years ago.
It's a beautiful looking model.
That was off the YouTube comments, I think, because I saw that as well, Bob, from the links where he had spoke about that.
Yeah, super talented builder, Dan Catcher. If you guys haven't had the chance, if you look on YouTube, he's done some really cool things with like torpedoes and all sorts of things as well.
And if you're an X-Files fan, you've seen some of his work. He did a lot of effects miniatures for that production company, which was out of Canada.
Yeah, so
damn, somebody say something.
I was gonna say, might get the sound module and the smoke module and the Type 7, Bob. We'll see. I'm kind of like, you build the submarine out, and then how much time do you really spend operating it, vice building or adjusting or doing stuff? And it's just there's a disproportionate time spent building. I love that aspect of the hobby, and Dave always harasses me about it. I just love the scale modeling aspect of creating a model that is accurate to the original subject. So yeah. I may add some extra things like that to that Type 7, and that's why I put so much time to the mast with the skipjack and all that type of thing. So plus it's fun,
Yeah, and I see Vaughn chuckling about how much time you spend tinkering versus driving.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I would say just so everybody doesn't get all excited about putting like smoke modules in their 96 scale boats and that kind of thing, like the compartment that I've got, for that Vallejo is like 6 by 2 by 4 inches. Like it takes up a pretty hefty, part of real estate. Granted, there's 2 in there, but if you're thinking you're going to put that in a small boat, while I'm sure it would be possible for some of you masochistic tiny boat people, I wouldn't recommend it if you're not exceptionally handy and creative when it comes to engineering that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I'm going to put it in my Type 9, Bowie.
There you go. You got room.
Bob, did you just say you're going to cheap out and only put 2 in the Vallejo instead of 4?
I'm doing 2, but they're split. Each one is split 2 ways. So I will have 4 functional exhaust nozzles.
If you buy the correct speed controller, you don't need a smoke module.
I suppose.
Just don't waterproof your LiPo, then you'll get some smoke, I'm sure.
No, I debunked that.
Spoke too soon there, Mike.
I guess so.
You haven't been up on the Bob's post. You got to catch up.
Did you throw a battery in the water, Bob, to see what would happen?
A little bit, kind of, just a little bit. you need to find it. Jason and I, we took a fully charged 3S LiPo, dunked it, nothing happened. Cut it, nothing happened. Stabbed it, nothing happened. Shredded it into little tiny pieces, nothing happened.
Yeah, some idiot told Bob that those things were okay in the water, and he was just dying to make a liar out of them.
I wonder who that would be. Oh, that's funny.
When you try to do it, you can't make it happen.
Exactly, until you put it in your boat and it explodes. And then they're all going to say, but you told me it was okay. Yep.
So, I have a question, Bob. This is probably more about, what direction are you going with, your business and all that? I mean, it's growing. You got the Sub Fest happening, and you're getting more people coming to that. And you moved to Texas, increase the size of your shop, and you're getting more walk-ins now. And I mean, where do you envision this going? Are you going to have how big of a market share you're looking for? How many people? What kind of products? What's your thoughts?
Oh, we won't rest until it's total and complete world domination. Yeah. That's but no, to your point, actually, Jason and I were just having a talk about this, and my wife was as well. Originally, I envisioned the dry docks as being like a one-stop shop for everything and anything that you needed for RC submarines. At this point in the business, I don't think that's feasible. I just took a look, and I've got something like $80,000 in inventory right now, which is really, really, really painful for me. It's not sustainable to keep that in terms of what's going on. And so what I want to focus on are the things that only pertain to RC submarines. So I'm going to probably steer away from supplying like drive shafts and servos and, you know, things that people can get on Amazon. I don't need to compete with those people, but I want to focus on, you know, developing an exceptionally robust line of subdrivers, you know, in multiple sizes, and fortifying the instructional videos so that people can learn how to build these boats out more. And then first and foremost, and we've talked about this before, and actually Randy and I are talking about this, an idea of creating an entry-level submarine at as cheap a price point as is possible to get people into the hobby. And I envision that as being available in a quasi-turnkey version for people, but also kit version for people. So, you know, maybe the kit parts are $500 and people can put it together, and now they've got a real submarine that they can drive.
I mean, you got to kind of differentiate or diversify your product line so that you can get guys in there and you get the initial hit, and then maybe they want more and they expand, or at least they've made an initial purchase too, which helps your business model. What about vertical integration? Have you thought about like your electronics? I mean, you have I can't remember the gentleman's name that produces the AD2s and 2ISs or SIs or whatever.
McLeod, yep.
Are you going to try to make those in-house or combine them to one unit or something like that? I mean, because if God forbid he gets hit by a bus, then, you know, we're all out of business because we don't have more electronics.
Yeah. And honestly, that's another area of opportunity that I want to focus on, is the technological aspect. We are dragging so far behind, you know, helicopters and aircraft and drones. Oh my Lord, you know, and with the, you know, readily available components and information out there to create, you know, custom programming, you know, with things like Arduino, there's really no excuse other than the fact that I don't think anybody has had the time, energy, or resources to really dedicate to creating a bespoke module for our hobby. I really don't think it would be hard to do at all. And I've worked with before. Are any of you guys familiar with John Anderson, by the way? He was at Subfest, the original Subfest. I was working with him on a control module to help the 2.4 gigahertz control under the water. Mike, you dealt with him a little bit by email, right? I have not been able to get a hold of him. I'm super worried about him.
The guy that we talked to initially who had the Arduino and he was going to come down, he was running all the server.
Yeah.
I branched into the basic stamp too. And like you saw, I got that thing running. So it'll read the receiver, it'll pump that out to the servos, or it'll run a routine based on a switch position on the transmitter, as far as I can.
Yeah.
I haven't at all.
So at any rate, not to delve too deep down that particular rabbit hole, that is another area of opportunity, because I think it would just attract more people if we had more, you know, cool stuff that made it easier to drive. You know, like right now we're all 5-stick drivers, right? We're driving a manual transmission with these submarines, but you know, all the drone guys and the airplane guys, they've got you know, cruise control and, you know, all of the safety things that modern vehicles would have. And for them to be lured into driving a stick shift is pretty hard. So I think we've got to move more in that direction a little bit. And honestly, you know, even for us five-speed drivers, to get some of those features would make it more enjoyable to operate our boats, I think. So
you could
Bob, the hardware is there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, from what I'm saying, the issue is we need, I mean, somebody somewhere has to know a drone guy who's willing to talk to us and say, well, this is the flight controller, because like that Mini Pix flight controller, you could program it to do things. We just don't know how. There's no practical experience. The problem is that there are very few trade shows. I remember at the RAM show, I started a conversation with this Jetty or whatever the name of the product. Their booth was there, but I didn't know where I was coming from yet because I had no experience with the 2.4. I wish I could walk into some manufacturer and say, this is what we do. What are all these goodies? How can we adapt them, period? And it may take a trade show. I don't see any more hobby trade shows unless somebody out here can tell me that there is one somewhere.
No more Rosemont.
Yeah, that Pixhawk, I don't know, Bob, if you remember that PowerPoint slide I sent you with the architecture using the Pixhawk and all the other stuff to basically use drone technology to drive what you're saying. So it's possible. I drew that picture. I just haven't yet figured out how to integrate all those because it's got all the different frequencies. But I think one of the things that drives this too for the younger crowd is video. I mean, they're just slaves to video.
Yep.
You know,
every time I put a sub video out, it's like boring, no FPV. Every single time. So, you know, if we can get that telemetry going, especially again, you know, Ed and we other 2.4 gigahertz dark side people, you know, if we can get that, you know, video system functional and transmitting out the antenna or periscope, it would leave those naysayers with a little less to chew on, I think.
We were doing that 15 years ago. I
know, but you know, it's still a matter of doing it with today's technology, you know, broadcasting in HD. With the size of modern cameras, there's no reason you couldn't be like a car, forward facing, rear facing, bottom facing camera.
I've got examples of that gear. I sent them to you.
Yeah, I know.
Now, Bob, there's a local boat club, surface runners only, that are using, there's one guy that is experimenting right now using the old, I think it's the NASA GPS system that they used to use on the drones. And he's got it set up right now, from what I've gathered off of his blog, where the boat, he can set up the system to come back like the old drones did. If you get into trouble, you turn your transmitter off and she'll come back and go to home. Well, he's done the same thing with the boat. And he's found a way now to take the top of that GPS system and he's camouflaged it to make it look like it's a radar, and it sits right up on top. But he's trying to program it so that he can go out, do what they call wayfare, I think it's the word.
Waypoints.
Where they can set certain points on the lake, and he can just let this thing go full auto and hit each one of those points and come back to home. Now, I don't know how well that NASA GPS system would do underwater, but that might be something to look into. That and the old KK2 board that came out of China for one of the first, you know, the quadcopters. You had to manually program them with the buttons and everything, but that's another thing you could try. And but again, I don't know how they would work underwater. I may just order up one of those KK2 boards.
GPS will not work underwater. And the problem, it's a secondary antenna. And the smallest I've seen was a hockey puck about 1.25 inches to 2 inches in diameter.
But if you kept it up, where it was just, you know, you might be able to make it work that way. It's just something you could maybe experiment with, but there's something that would give you a deal where you could use waypoints and your sub would travel.
Let's back up. But before we start inventing products, you need to ascertain demand. So we've got a lot of people here, a lot of people with boats. So, you know, is the idea of being able to program waypoints for your submarine desirable to you? Do you want to be able to, you know, flash your submarine with a course, you know, speed, heading, waypoints, and let it go?
No.
Or
No.
I don't think it's worth the effort.
I'm just saying, you know, so all this technology is out there, but, you know, if there's no demand for it, it's creating a solution for a problem that doesn't exist.
Reading the onboard information is nice underway. Okay, it's nice knowing my boat 100 meters away, and I've had this happen, and I could clearly see that she's not maintaining the same course. The pitch is 0 and the roll is 0 is nice, but I'm still in command of it. Okay, so I don't, you know, I don't see where the fun or the need or the expense, and this is me, I'm just giving the pros and cons, where it's necessary to push a button and watch my boat do a course that I pre-programmed at home. I don't think, I mean, there's always a lot going on at the lake. You go down there, you're trying to avoid, I run with 15, 20 other people every other Sunday. I am constantly dodging these fools. Yep. I mean, you can ask Steve down there. I have to kind of do a big circle all the time where they're in the center of it. So they hit me all the time. So I really don't think that level of automation would be necessary. I bet you'd use it 10% of the time, if at all.
There's only two things about it. One is if you're a nerd and you just want to tackle the technical aspect to do it. That's the thing which I find interesting. The other, Ed, too, is if you're a 2.4 gig boat and you do want it to go fully submerged, you know, 3 feet, 2 feet, run around and do something and then come back and give you some data. What was the water temperature? What was the depth below the keel? Some crap like that. You could do data logging. But how many guys would want to do that? Is that sense of control, even though it's still submerged, there's still some sense of control.
So with the drone guys with waypoints, this is a competitive thing.
Well, right? And there's a commercial application as well, right? They're using. These guys
have competitions.
So this is my take, and you guys tell me whether I'm barking up the wrong tree or not. For you really experienced guys, when a boat is lost, 99% of the time, why?
I took my eyes off it. I took my eyes off it.
User error. The operator did not do the proper thing. He dove at the wrong time. He had the switch in the wrong position. He was flooding the ballast when he should have been blowing the ballast. He was heading in the wrong direction, whatever the situation was. In my mind, really where this technology has a place is to increase the safety factor of fully submerged operation of our boats. And so I could see more along the lines, you know, especially if some of you guys are lucky, you're operating 90% of the time in pools or really clear water. But most of the time you're in dark water, it's muddy, it's murky, it's gross, you can't see your boat, you dive, you cross your fingers and you hope for the best, right? But if you could pre-program the boat to dive to 12 inches, proceed for 10 seconds and then resurface, all of that user error goes away. And so there would still be a sphincter factor, I think, involved, hoping that it comes back up again. But it would help reduce, you know, the anxiety of operating in a quasi or fully submerged state. So in my mind, that's really where the opportunity is. And I've talked to you know, Mike about this a lot, and that's why we wanted to come up with a module that would really take over. So we're gaining all of the strength of high frequency radios, and then when submerged, the boat takes over, because we can't see what's going on anyway. The boat would know what is its depth, what is its heading, all of this information much better than we would be able to. And so it could execute a pre-programmed command, resurface, and then you can, you know, give it a new command. That I think is where the opportunity really lies. And the more I'm playing around with these high frequency radios, the writing is really on the wall. By the way, I think I told you guys, I reached out to RadioLink, my supplier for those radios. I'm a distributor for them. they would do 75 megahertz for me. But because of the global chip shortage right now, they're saying it'd be at least 2 years before they would be able to take it on. And then we're going to be looking at a minimum order quantity for a vendor of probably between 500 and 1,000 units. And so we'd be looking at a massive investment on behalf of a vendor to front the costs of stocking 500 or 1,000 radio systems to keep the hobby afloat, so to speak.
Well, 2 years, 500 people, and you know the FCC. I talked to FCC guys. They're not 75 megahertz is not going away, so you're safe there. So basically, Bob, you got 2 years to build a customer base through Subfest to have enough dudes to sell those radios within 2 years, and you're good to go.
I'll just start pre-selling them. Yeah, exactly. What could go wrong?
Yeah.
All right. The genesis of this discussion started, Bob, when you observed, along with Mike's help there, you got to know your market. What do people want? Do they want this autonomous operation, or do they want to be in the driver's seat? I think those are the two schools of thought that you have to address and pick the winner of those two schools. Now, here's the deal, and I'll make this very personal to you, Bob Martin. You enjoy nice cars. Do you enjoy driving them?
I do.
How would you like to be in a Tesla and be an interested spectator?
Yeah.
Do you enjoy that?
I understand what you're saying.
Well, would you enjoy that?
So again, I'm using the analogy. You know, we're all manual stick drivers here right now. If you ask, you know, 90% of the population out there right now, would you like to drive a sports car with a 5-speed? They're all going to say no, because they don't know, and it's scary, and they can't figure out how to do it. So I'll throw it back a little bit that we're a little old school, all of us here, because we've had to be. We're coming from a background where this is where the hobby was. But in order to attract the new generation of people, we need to make it more approachable, safer, and more attractive, more aligned to the world that they see right now.
I lived too long.
Well, so Elon Musk it. That's the way you're going to find out. You're going to throw it at the wall and see if it sticks.
I think we ought to.
The way you have to do it, you know, to see who is going to actually want to embrace it and who isn't.
I think we ought to walk before we run. I mean, we've heard some pretty fantastic stuff here, the GPS and everything else. I like the idea of telemetry. You know, you could put easily sensors in your boat. You already have them that sense the depth, the battery charge, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So if you have that information, that would be 100% increase in safety of operating the boat in terms of getting it back. Now, guiding it through the water with GPS and things like that can come later, but that seems to be awfully complicated and awfully expensive. But I think you could do telemetry on 2.4 boats very easily.
You can, yeah, absolutely. Of course, the challenge is that telemetry is only available to you when the boat is on the surface. And so,
well, if you're running a 2.4 boat, you're usually going to have the antenna out of the surface, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. And as somebody who's now got experience with the 2.4, and Subfest was the perfect example of this. So we had an obstacle course set up at Subfest, and the idea is about 50% of the course is surface. You have to go through like buoys, head around, and then you've got a certain stretch to submerge, and then you need to complete a certain amount submerged. The definition being the main hull needs to be under the water. So you've got your sail.
Periscope depth.
Yeah.
What you're saying basically is periscope
or deeper. Periscope or deeper, exactly.
Or deep.
what I found with that is the people running 72 and 75 megahertz, they had a distinct advantage because they have a 3-foot wiggle room to do that maneuvering. The thing about 2.4 in that is your world is limited, right, to this like little narrow strip right next to the surface of the water, which is fine 90% of the time if you're in a pond or lake, because you do not want to go deeper than that if you can't see the boat. As soon as it disappears, there's like clench, right? But for for venues like swimming pools and Subfest with a spring-fed pool, to be able to dive down 10 or 15 feet and watch your boat circle at the bottom would be amazing. And so what we're talking about here is, can we take the 2.4 gigahertz narrow band and can we expand it so that people can enjoy that submerged realm more, but still get all the benefits of the 2.4 radios at the same time? So that's kind of where I'm coming from.
I think that's different possibility. I like what Mr. Hafner was saying about some of the simple things first. I was at Dave's and we were trimming my boat, and the WTC had got a leak, and my mast headlight and sub ID beacon started flashing. Like, oh shit, it's leaking. What is it? Visual indication. Exactly that it was leaking. Took it out. We could clear it out. So some of maybe those simple things, then there is a way to do telemetry even underwater. I mean, you could data log, but either way, some of those simple things would be nice to have.
Mm-hmm. Can I make a point? One more thing I found about live telemetry. The Mini Pix has a barometer on board. So when I seal it, suddenly the barometer with the altitude becomes like -12 meters. And as the equipment heats up when I'm underway for about an hour, it drops down to an equivalent altitude of -250 meters, meaning, because the pressure is higher, I'm not at altitude, the pressure increased, but it's stabilized. It stayed that way for 2 hours, okay? So that's an indicator of a possible leak if it begins to increase again. So I found that pretty cool as well.
And honestly, a low-tech solution. There's water sensors out there all over the place. You have a low-tech solution. It's like water-detected blow ballast. It's like a super simple indication and programming. Water-detected blow ballast, light flashes, right? Bring it back to shore. Figure out what's wrong. That kind of stuff it's right there. It's not mainstream. The technology already exists. It's just not widely implemented in our hobby yet. So backing up to where we're coming from, how this whole thing started about, there's massive amount of opportunity within our hobby to embrace the technology that's out there in incremental steps. So I would love to explore that, a little bit more, drag us kicking and screaming into not the 21st century, maybe not even the 20th century, but I'd love to get into the 19th century in terms of the technology compared to what is out there right now, compared to all this other stuff that's there. And to Ed's point and Mike's point, the technology's already there. We just need to like latch on to it and adapt it for our use.
Is it possible to develop a tiny depth transducer, depth finder that could be linked into your the leveler? So if you're diving and you come within a certain distance of the bottom, the boat will automatically, level off.
Yeah, so I had actually talked to a programmer, and he was the one that I had teased you guys. We were using the idea of acoustic communications to control a submarine, which in my mind is so cool. But there is like 800 things wrong with it, the hurdles that would need to be overcome. But we had already figured that out. So not only if it was about to impact the bottom, but if you were to impact another boat or the side of a swimming pool, it would automatically, for example, engage full reverse in an attempt to avert, a high-speed collision with a head-on collision with another object in the boat. So that again, the technology is out there right now. We just need to figure out what kind of a package we can put it in, and to what degree it's automated, and to what degree we want to have it user, controlled.
Hey, Bob, how many people actually lose their boats? In a
you're not a real sub skipper unless you've lost it at least once.
So, and that would be in a pond that's, a definite area.
So in my experience, you lose the boat. Typically, when you dive it, you lose sight of it, and you think you know where it is. You chicken out, you hit the ballast button, and it doesn't come up. That's 99% of the time what ends up happening.
And then you're talking about losing it forever.
Oh, you mean like lost forever? I think
lost forever. Yeah.
I think that's a pretty low percentage. I think for the most part, people are they have enough invested in those boats that they'll figure some way to find it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was talking to a gentleman today who built a boat years ago and dove it into the bottom of a pond, and he got the Richmond Dive Club to come out in the middle of the night. They circled the pond with their cars with the lights shining into the pond, and they had about 3 guys with scuba gear go in. The police came up and wanted to know what was going on.
Search and rescue operation, yeah.
Yeah, and then the TV crew showed up because they thought they were looking for a dead body or something, but they did find the boat.
Okay, I'll answer it. In 30 years, I lost 1 boat forever. Crick U-25 at the beginning of my career, because I did not have this group of people and any understanding what I was doing. I lost it in Kaler's Pond in Moriches, New York.
I'm worried about Lake Ronkonkoma.
Lake Ronkonkoma. The thing about Lake Ronkonkoma, it's shallow. It's fairly shallow with a long slope going out. You will have to swim, but you keep it in that southwest corner where we run, you'll be fine. And always make sure it's an onshore breeze. So if it's an engine dead or something, hopefully you can let it drift in with the wind. In a Lake Ronkonkoma is about, I don't know, half a mile wide. It's going to suck if that sucker blows over to the other side.
Yeah, well, it's also a few hundred feet deep.
The big thing in my mind is
not a few hundred feet deep. Yeah. It's 80 feet at its deepest depth.
Oh, I thought it was a lot deeper than that.
No, 80 feet. I have the
Wouldn't the whole point of this is trying to drive your submarine yourself?
This is true. Yeah. Well, yes. Well, that's what we're asking is to what degree are people willing to relinquish control, and to what degree do they want to retain control?
I guess if you want to go on a trip, just go get on a Greyhound bus then.
But backing up to that loss of the boat thing, the big lesson that I would impart based on my experience, just make sure no matter what, you have your boat rigged up in such a manner that if you lose control of it, it will do everything that it can in its power to retain the surface and get back to you. And so we're talking about a fail-safe system of some kind. It could be anything, a buoy, a mechanical buoy release held in place with a tic-tac, or, a blow ballast command after X amount of seconds of lost signal, or whatever that situation might be. Depending on the radio system that you're operating, it can do funky things when you turn your transmitter off. And the last thing you want is for your throttle to kick in and your rudder to heel, hard to starboard, and it does spirals all the way down to the bottom of the lake. So just make sure you've got something in there that's going to tell your boat what to do if you lose communication with it.
Gotcha.
And the beauty of the 2.4 is it's instantaneous. As soon as it loses signal, it tries to get back up to the surface again.
I found a neat little thing. I was looking for something to use to test my my cylinder with, and I looked on eBay and I found a 63-inch dog pool. It's 12 inches deep, 63 inches in diameter, and it folds up, so you don't have to have a big tub laying around anywhere. And it was about $25. So if you look up dog kiddie pools on eBay, you might find one if anybody needs it.
Yeah.
And going back to loss of boats, you know, 90% of the issues can be resolved with pre-mission checklists. You know, make sure you run through your checklist. I brought, I am ashamed to admit this, I brought the Oberon out to the lake, put the top on, it was running perfectly and everything submerged. I'm like, why is the top like keeled over to the side? And then I'm like, the bottom of the boat is up, but where's the top of the boat? The whole upper hull had disconnected from the lower part of the boat. Fortunately, the lower part was positively buoyant and the upper part was attached by an air hose and the 2.4 gigahertz antenna, so it was not lost. So point being, with a checklist, I would have double checked the 90-degree connection before I put it up, because I dropped it down, got distracted from people asking me questions, and then dropped it in the water.
You should read your own book.
Do as I say, not as I do.
Yeah, since the loss of that boat back in, I think it was 89, 90, I don't put the boat in the water without going through that checklist because I don't want to lose another one.
Yep. And honestly, as a pilot, a burgeoning pilot, the biggest killer of pilots is complacency. Oh, I've been doing the same thing the same way for so many times. I know exactly what I'm doing, but you just skip one step and that's when you're dead. So that's why you have checklists.
So can I ask a newbie question?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So I've been watching your video, Bob, on waterproofing servos. And I think Ed sent me something. Is there actually a true waterproof servo for in the wet, off the shelf, and you don't have to do anything to it?
So yes and no. So High-Tech makes a waterproof servo, but it's not IP68, it's IP67. So there's different ratings, right? I use them extensively in this Baleo build, but I'm comfortable with that because that boat is 2.4 and it's going to be operating within that narrow, band from the surface. And so it's not like it's going to be at 30 feet of pressure with everything in there. I don't see him in here, but Monahan, Nick, he goofed around, and I did as well, with waterproofing standard servos, right? You fill them with mineral oil and you put like an O-ring in, you silicone all the seals and everything. That can work when you do it properly. And Dave made some excellent posts online about the idea of pressure equalization membranes and all of this like really cool stuff. But the issue is with some of those homebrew solutions for waterproofing, the current draw becomes exceptionally high because the compression on those O-rings, it becomes a lot. And so you could be doubling or tripling your amp draw from a waterproof homebrew servo versus some of these more like commercially engineered servos out there. I think he said that the High-Tech servo, was it a third of the amperage? I think he had said. It's on the forums if you want to look it up. They draw so much less. And this is a concern because if you got 4 or 5 servos in your boat and they're all kind of working at the same time, if you've only got, say, like a 2 amp BEC in there providing, voltage or sort of current to them, you can overload it and then everything will shut down. And that's obviously a bad situation. So sometimes it's just better to fork out the $50 for a commercial waterproof servo than it is to take the $5 servo and try and waterproof it yourself.
Yeah, because I noticed that, so I did order and I have one coming. It's a $105 servo and it says it's an IP67. I think it's a high tech.
Yep.
But you remember when we had the upholder, remember that one of those servos up front, we had to change out. Jason did that.
Yep.
And it said waterproof on it, but it failed on me when I went out with Ed and Steve last Sunday. Yeah, I think it was last Sunday.
And it wouldn't work. The blue waterproof servo did?
Yeah, that blue waterproof one quit working. So I ordered a new one.
You got to get your terms straight.
Yeah.
When we were kids, remember you'd buy a cheap-ass watch and it would say waterproof? Yeah, in the shower. As soon as you let it sink in the tub, it leaked because it wasn't pressure-proof. Those servos are not pressure-proof.
Well, what was interesting is I took it apart because I wanted to know why it failed.
Yeah.
And even though it was brand new, because you guys put it in there, it looked like it was all rusty and crappy on the inside. And I was surprised. So I had bought another servo that said it was waterproof, but not IP67. And I took it apart just to look at it because I had it installed. And it was the one that was working the torpedo doors. Mm-hmm. But I took it apart just out of curiosity and just a little bit of rust on the screws. But man, everything else was totally dry. And it was one of those $35 servos. But I took a couple of the newer ones and I kind of followed your video, Bob, and I sealed it all up and I'm getting ready to put fluid in it. And I was talking to Steve Hodges and I think Steve's on here, but I'm getting ready to fill it with a fluid and I was wondering if I should fill it with Corrosion X or the mineral oil or olive oil. So I'm kind of doing an experiment, but I'm still waiting for that. What's that?
Salad.
Which one, Dave?
Oil.
Salad oil?
That's it.
Italian.
Hey, Bob, canola oil?
Hey, so, I honestly would use mineral oil myself, but I mean, the Corrosion X, only because I think the Corrosion X is probably exponentially more expensive. I'm just guessing.
Dave, do you advocate a little garlic and balsamic vinaigrette with that, or?
Vaughn, if it's already an IP67 servo, I just give it a light coating of oil. I wouldn't fill it because then you're going to get those problems that they were talking about with the pressure problem. I would just barely give the electronics. I mean, if the printed circuit boards were in there were humus sealed and environmentally correct, I mean, you're buying commercial brand stuff. So if you get a failure of 1 in 5 servos, I can see that. This is commercial grade. This isn't military grade servos. These are not class 3 printed circuit boards. This is not salt tested at 200 hours. These are servos from China. So we're lucky, if 1 out of 5 fails, I think that's a good rate for the $40. Which is
fine if you weren't paying $100 or $50 a pop for them, but
right. I'm talking about the $40 blue high tech, which is I'm assuming what he had in there.
Yeah, the cheap ones I had a failure rate of only 10%. That was acceptable.
Yeah, I was on that VTech that I pulled apart. It actually had an O-ring underneath the output shaft, which I was surprised, and then maybe that's why I kept it clean. But I added
This is interesting. So I'm in the Baleo. I'm running a combination. I've got high-tech servos running my bows, my bow retracts and my bow pitch control, as well as the ballast servos. And then I've got those like 35 kilogram metal waterproof servos from China at $25 a pop for the stern planes and the rudders. So I'm super interested to see, how they hold up over time. What I actually want to do, I'm going to take, Jason, remind me on Monday, I want to take one of each of those, I want to throw them in our test tank. So it's about 2 feet deep, and we're going to leave it there for like a week. And we're going to see what happens to them when we pull them out after a week.
Do you think you could set them up to cycle constantly? Maybe with some kind of servo tester to have.
Yeah.
Well, I don't, you know, what we could probably do is every couple hours, we'll just go in there and we'll just twist the link
several times a day.
Yep.
I have another thought, and this is thanks to Dave. Dave, I'm going to credit you on this. On that pre-underway checklist, his original ones, he would tell you to lubricate the servo throw rods, which I do. I use a drop of CLP, you know, corrosion X on each little throw rod, every seal. But I also do it on the waterproof servos. I put a little drop between the horn and the body, hoping it works in there towards the seal of that. That's just, I'm throwing that out there to y'all. If it fails at that point, maybe if there's just a little oil that wicks itself in there before you put the model in the water, it might help that seal.
It's a big difference. I just want to mention the difference between, you know, we people who've converted to 2.4 when you're running at 12 inches of depth 99% of the time. And for you guys who are in these optimal water configurations where you may be diving to 5 or 8 or 10 feet of depth, there's a huge difference in water pressure between 1 foot and 10 feet. So that's something that you just need to kind of bear in mind. Honestly, if I were to be running, or if I knew I was going to be running my boat at those extreme depths, I would be putting my servos in the dry, and I would be using cup seals or bellows seals to make proper, you know, like linkage seals to do that. But I feel more comfortable with those IP67 rated servos at 12 inches if that's where they're going to be 99% of the time.
To Bob's point, it's 1.5 PSI per foot.
So
1 atmosphere per 10 feet. All right, I need to go.
Yeah, so Bob,
my wife texting me from the next room, but I can leave the meeting running for you guys. It was good seeing you all for sure. Bear in mind, again, for those of you that weren't here earlier on, I'll be sending a notice out. I'll be liquidating a whole bunch of inventory only to DiveTribe members. In the coming weeks, I'll send a list out so you guys will be able to see it and get all super excited about it and break your checkbooks out and pay obscene amounts of money for it. So bear that in mind. I'm gonna take off. I'll leave command to the illustrious David Merriman, and you guys have an awesome weekend.
Hey, Bob.
Take care.
So here's my final question.